look at a player like Sam Darnold, knowing that they can sign him without having to give the Vikings compensation. And so even though Sam Darnold's market may have seemingly been flat in recent weeks, now we're in a situation officially where another team doesn't have to give up anything to get him. And now you have to wait to see whether that forces any team with a quarterback need, whether that's the Giants or the Raiders or a team we don't see coming, to reestablish the value of Sam Darnold and to decide to pursue him more aggressively than they thought they would up until now.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. You know, the Giants, the Raiders, the Titans, the Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, like it will, you know, change when you don't have to give up compensation because he's been tagged. And I would just say this, you know, people kind of look at this with Sam Darnold. When he was drafted, he wasn't even 21 years old. Made his first start in the NFL at 21. He is a young player that played through some adversity. And, you know, this idea that, hey, Kevin O'Connell's just going to make it right. Like we can't skip over the Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall era in Minnesota. Like it didn't go Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold. Like that's not the path that it went. There are guys that fail at playing the position all the time. The guy proved that he can play at a high level. And I think it's important always to keep that into consideration.
Yeah, and you guys alluded to this, but I do think it's worth reminding people. It's not that the Vikings don't like Sam Darnold. In fact, in talking to Kevin O'Connell, Josh McCown at the Combine, they love this guy. They love what they got out of him. They developed a really personal relationship with him as well. But it is a business, so we'll keep an eye on these other teams that, to Adam's point, now don't have as high of a price to pay to get him. There's a lot of teams that need a quarterback, too. All right, to more news. Adam, the Jets are making moves at wide receiver. What can you tell us there?
Well, they are officially moving on from Davante Adams, to the surprise of nobody. There was not anybody that was going to be trading for that contract the way it was constituted. And so they are releasing Davante Adams, allowing him to become a free agent just months after they traded for him. And now Davante Adams will go into the pool of free agent receivers. Won't have to wait, can sign with anybody starting tomorrow. Doesn't have to wait until next week because he's being released by the New York Jets. And again, we'll see what team decides that Davante Adams is worthy of a prominent spot on their roster. Davante Adams, I would imagine, would be looking for a place that he can win games, have a good quarterback, have some of the ingredients that have been missing in recent years, whether he played in Las Vegas or in New York.
All right, we'll see if he keeps an eye on where Aaron Rodgers goes. I don't know if they're still interested in keeping that going, but either way, both of them looking for potential new spots. We're just getting started on NFL Live. The Cowboys signed Osa Odighizuwa to a big deal, as Adam told you about, but the offense still has some major concerns. Coming up next, you'll see it in a moment. Tim is going to tell us why Dallas should look to the draft to fill these holes. Tag news with T. Higgins getting tagged by the Bengals. Higgins is the fifth skill position player to be tagged in consecutive seasons since the tag was implemented in 1993. The last two, Chris Godwin and Dak Prescott, both agreed to long-term deals before playing on the tag for a second season. Le'Veon Bell, of course, set out the entire 2018 season, while Kirk Cousins remains the only player to play under the tag twice. Right, so Acho, was this a big mistake by the Bengals to invest this much in Higgins, knowing who else remains that they still have to get signed on that team?
No, it was the right decision by the Cincinnati Bengals to put a franchise tag on T. Higgins in order to work out a long-term deal. But that decision comes with collateral damage. We just saw that they released Alex Kappa, their starting guard, who came in a couple years ago to help protect Joe Burrow. Now, all of a sudden, you have T. Higgins. You're going to sign Jamar Chase to a long-term deal, but you still have to be wary about the issues with the offensive line. And so in order to create cap space for one thing, you want to create a new problem. And so, yes, right decision. You keep your quarterback happy. You have one of your star receivers, but now you have to go and restock and reload that offensive line to keep Joe Burrow protected so you don't recreate a problem that you had from a few years back where Joe Burrow was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL.
So this is a team that's got a number of financial questions to face this offseason. We know that Jamar Chase wants to be the highest paid player, non-quarterback in football. He's going to become the highest paid wide receiver in football history to the tune of about $40+ million per year on average. We know that T. Higgins is looking for a deal upwards of $30 million per year. They don't seem particularly close on either deal right now, but there's going to be, in Cincinnati's perfect world, a lot of money donated or dedicated to the wide receiver position. That doesn't even include Trey Hendrickson, who led the NFL in sacks last year. He wants a new deal. We know they have to upgrade the defense somehow. That's not going to be easy to do. And so this is a team that's navigating any number of financial issues with Joe Burrow paying close attention, having sent very many signals in recent weeks that he's waiting and wanting Cincinnati to re-sign these players.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. So if Higgins is going to be at 30 plus million and Chase is going to be at 40 million, so there's 70 there, and Burrow is at 50, so you got $120 million a year for 3 players. Like,
good math, Tim.
Listen, this is why you can't. Thank you. I've worked hard. Okay, listen. You can't do it, and that's why you don't do it, and they're all happening at the same time. So that's why the wait and see game, when you know somebody can play, extend the guy, do the deal, rather than kicking it down the road and then thinking that you're going to tag him. And if you've drafted well, the guys that were drafted behind him, they're going to be up for new deals. To me, it's actually just kind of, we can call it cheap. I guess I'd prefer to just say it's kind of irresponsible in terms of how you're managing the talent that you draft. And much like we've talked about, things that they've done in Dallas, it's a very similar thing. They've actually drafted well in Dallas, but when you draft well, you better be quick to re-sign those guys that can play. If you don't, it ends up being more expensive, and then quite honestly, you end up losing them, having to let them walk. It's just, you create a mess by doing it. They've kind of created a horrendous situation with 3 of their best and most important players all kind of, being due to be paid around the same time.
And I think the only real issue that I would say as far as the mess that's been created, quote unquote, is the fact that it's really Joe Burrow that wants to make sure that the band stays together. Joe Burrow has made it very clear that he wants Jamar Chase to not only stay on the team, be the highest paid receiver, and also to have T. Higgins still be on the team. We've seen other teams that have let star players go and drafted people to replace them, no matter what the quarterback says, thinks, or feels. But in this situation, it seems as if the team, meaning the Bengals, are accommodating to their star quarterback, which I believe is the right decision. And so, yes, you have over $170 million allocated to some of your star players, but also this is the biggest jump in the salary cap that we've seen. And so there is more cash available, but you have to just be wise and delegate how that money is spent, especially when it comes to not only free agency, but also now rebuilding those holes through the draft.
Yeah, and I think that it makes sense to involve your quarterback, your biggest investment from a player perspective, and say, all right, but you got to make a choice. You can't have T. Higgins and have Jamar Chase, have them be paid at the top of the market. Because, oh, by the way, we do need to sign linemen. We do need to address things on the defensive side of the ball because, the guy that helps you get the ball back, Trey Hendrickson, he's due to get paid as well. And so, look, it's important to have guys, voice their opinion, how they feel about certain players. But at some point, you have to say, look, we can't pay everybody. And I would also say this, it's not Joe Burrow's job to essentially give money back. That's the team's job to make sure that they're managing the money properly.
And all these questions are why there are other teams wondering if the Bengals will wind up entertaining offers for T. Higgins. Especially last year, he requested a trade, didn't get one. What if he requests a trade again this year in light of not getting the type of contract that he wants? Now, if the Bengals can re-sign him and give him what he wants and the two sides can work out a deal, great. They can go on happily ever after. But if they can't get that worked out, I think there are enough wide receiver needy teams out there that are waiting to see whether the Bengals would be willing to listen and entertain the idea of a tag and trade for T. Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, those wide receiver needy teams and teams that want to be Super Bowl contenders, you see the teams that have recently won the Super Bowl, they've had a
1994. T. Higgins was one of the players to get